This portion of the CU podcast is sponsored by Retrobit.
Retrobit has partnered up with Elden Pixels, an indie game developer, to publish the NES version of their game Always Awakening. Originally released on Steam for PC, now you'll get to see what happens after that version. There are new rooms to explore, new challenges, and so much more. In true Retrobit fashion, they've made it into a collector's edition that comes with plenty of exclusive collectibles. On top of their high-quality work, this Always Awakening game was remastered to fit the NES perfectly. They've actually taken the game and had to rework the whole thing specifically for this release. So you know you're getting some quality old-school gameplay right here. In Always Awakening, you traverse dangerous dungeons, meet interesting and fun characters, and explore the world in this 8-bit adventure game. And in true Retrobit fashion, they are doing something totally different in what you don't see other companies doing. They are making what they call a digital version of Always Awakening that combines aspects of both physical and digital games.
In this digital, the collectible and retractable ZO 8GB USB contains the ROM but still includes exclusive extras and displayable packaging, all in order to provide a digital experience while continuing to support these indie game developers. But if you want to keep it old school and stick to the classics, there's also the NES cart version available that comes with all kind of collectibles, including a full colored manual, just like we remember. We used to have that. Whichever way you're planning to go, right now is the time to reserve yours as they are available for pre-order now until October 17th. Visit retro-bit.com/always-awakening to see all the places offering both versions while they're available. And follow them on social media at Retrobit Gaming to stay updated on all their new releases. Ian, did something happen this past weekend you want to talk about?
I worked my last day at Luna Video Games.
Two locations.
Two locations.
Chula Vista and El Cajon.
Chula Vista, El Cajon.
Ex-Voltaire Street.
Ex-Voltaire.
Ex-Newport.
Putting an end to 15 years of video game retail. I don't think I've ever done anything that long. I think my total time in restaurants might have been 13 to 14 years. So it was close, but certainly I've never worked at any one place.
Do you want to explain
that long?
It wasn't that long after you moved to San Diego, correct?
No, it wasn't. So I moved to San Diego in 2005. I was working summer of 2005. I was working for Luna. My first official job at Luna was dropping flyers on cars for the 2005 holiday season. And then I officially started working at Luna, like shifts in, I think, summer of 2006. And I think I was full-time at Luna by 2007.
So obviously you were a game collector before that, so you're familiar with retro games. And so when you saw a game store, you're like, okay, let's see if they have work.
So what happened is when I moved to San Diego first, I lived in the Mission Hills area for a couple of months. And the landlord was, she was a real see you next Tuesday. And my girlfriend at the time and my roommate had just had tons and tons of issues with her. So we started looking. And my first job here was delivering flowers. And every time I went into Ocean Beach, I loved it. And they all loved Ocean Beach, so we moved in. Our new landlord, who she was very nice, screwed up our electricity, so we were without electricity for like 5 days, and I needed something to do, and I had my DS fully charged, but I hadn't played it in a while. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going to go try to... Mario Kart DS had just come out, and I was like, I'm going to go try to find a copy of this. And... looked in the phone book. That's how long ago this was.
Wow.
Still looked in the phone book.
You don't want look up on the internet still.
I mean, this was well before smartphones. We had no electricity.
5 years before. Yeah.
We had no electricity for internet hookup. So I looked in the phone book and Luna had an ad there. And when I tried to find out where it was literally a block down and 2 blocks over. So I walked and I picked it up. And of course I asked him if he, needed any help. He was like, no. So I just kept going there for a while. And eventually the one day I walked in and he was like, so you want a job?
That's how it happened?
Yeah. No, that's exactly how it happened. He's like, you want a job? And I was like, yeah. Because when Luna started, the first 3 years of Luna, Treg was the only employee there. And he worked every day.
And when did he start it?
2003.
Okay.
So he worked every single day. took like I think in the first 3 years, he's not lying. He took like I think 3 days off during the year, and then he used to close for a week between Christmas and New Year's.
Gotcha. So he wouldn't even take off like Sundays or 1 day a week,
Nope.
Mondays.
No,
7 days a week. Wow.
he was a dedicated small business owner and was there all the time. There was a guy named Rhett who he had cover a couple of shifts for him, but Rhett was never an official employee.
Gotcha.
So I was the first employee. And yeah, I mean, where do you go from there? I mean, that's...
I mean, you saw a lot in 15 years, obviously. You saw the retro in 2006. That's when, the Wii comes out, Virtual Console, eBay gets bigger, YouTube gets... 2006 was the year I always say that's where everything turned. YouTube gets bigger. James puts out his AVGN videos on there. People really start rediscovering their games a lot more. Like all this stuff happened around there.
Yeah, and it didn't happen instantly. The first couple of years at Luna, we did well, but there was only one location. One employee was really all Trade could afford, and we were still catering to a crowd of people that were very much like I was in the late 90s. People who were just like, this is what interests them. There were obviously places online where you could go and talk about retro games. Nintendo Age existed.
Sure.
A lot of the old early Nintendo fan sites were starting to fall apart, but TS Otter's NES Pit was long gone by then. There were places, but it hadn't really entered the mainstream. So it was a very small, very I don't know how to say it, very boutique-y.
Yeah, and plus, back then, the price scales were radically different than what they are now. There were expensive games, but not in the scale now and not in terms of the quantity of those games. The average NES game in 2006 compared to now, are you kidding me?
When I first started there, Nintendo 64s were $25.
With a controller?
With a controller.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Maybe even 20. I know they were 20 at one point in time, but I think by the time I started there, they were $25, one controller.
Still in the GameCube era.
NESs were $49.99. Super Nintendos, I think, were $69.99. And it was crazy because I think PS2s were like $150, which is actually not that far from where PS2s are now.
Yeah, but they dipped.
They dipped for a long time. Yes. PS2,
you can't count the last year and a half. It doesn't make any sense.
I think during my time there, PS2s were as cheap. I think they got as cheap as $39 or $49.99. Sega Genesis systems, I think, were $29.99.
But average game prices were down. You had obviously some game collectors, but it wasn't like we're getting all of this to make money. It was more just still like, I want to play stuff or collect stuff.
Yeah.
Or gather stuff.
Yep. There were people always looking for rarities, but it wasn't to flip it. It was still people
like crazy assholes like me walk in and want Baby Boomer.
It was largely people still just buying for their collections. It hadn't turned into an alternate revenue source, for people or anything like that yet.
Sure. So that's around, 2006 early era. I first saw you in 2008 that summer. And I believe I bought the Baby Boomer and maybe Prince of Persia or whatever. I bought a few games there.
Right.
Some of the very uncommon ones I still needed. Like who's this crazy asshole with the short hair? Then obviously you saw a lot change. Like that was like 1.0 Luna, and then you probably got to like a 2.0 one within probably like 5 years. Did you see like another change?
Yeah.
Waves sort of switch.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that by the time the 360 and the PS3 were in full swing, I felt like, in a way, I feel like Generation 7 brought a lot of people back into video games. We started doing a lot of business for 360 and modern stuff, as well as the retro stuff. Nintendo still remained popular. Nintendo 64 hit a kind of like a feverish peak probably around 2011, 2012. It's always been popular, but that's where I first started to kind of notice it's the 20 years after it comes out sort of thing that makes it very popular. But the first few years, Nintendo and Super Nintendo were always the popular focus. And then as we move on into like 2012 and on, things start to slowly change. Nintendo starts to get a little less popular by around 2014, I would say.
All Nintendo stuff?
Just the original Nintendo.
Oh, NES.
Yeah, starts to get a little less popular by around 2014. Super Nintendo, gets very popular. N64 is an absolute frenzy.
Sure.
It was always the Nintendo systems that got really popular. But I did see a couple of weird... there's a couple of weird, like, moments there too. There was a moment where everyone got into Sega Master System. I remember that very clearly. Even you did. I mean, you finished your set.
I got out before everyone else got in.
But a lot of people got really into Sega Master System. That was one of the more interesting things for me to watch, was as Nintendo collecting got more popular and the prices started to raise exponentially, there were people who were trying to find the next reasonable full set to collect that they could do without having to compete with a bunch of other people. And for like 2 years, I was getting constantly people looking for Sega Master System stuff. It had a lifespan of about 2 years. No one asks for Sega Master System stuff anymore. I probably get as many people looking for Atari 2600 games as I do
because
Sega
no one
Master
had it
System
when it
stuff.
came out here.
Right.
I mean, I had a Sega Master System too. I only had like 2 games, so you can't even say I really had it as a childhood system. So and obviously the pandemic stuff nowadays that rebounded a lot of prices of the 80s and 90s stuff.
Yeah, it did.
Which is weird.
Nintendo was on a pretty...
It was last legs, NES.
NES was on was on a downward slope from 2017 to 2019. The expensive games were still expensive, but you saw, I mean, it was a very noticeable drop off in interest, and you did start to see some of the rare games that were not good games or important games start to kind of come down in price a little bit.
And that's how you know the general interest is going away.
Right.
If someone's coming and buying Tecmo World Cup Soccer, like an uncommon sports game that's hard to find,
right,
that's just going to sit there.
Yeah,
that means there's less collectors looking for it.
The first half of my time at Luna, if I had a copy of Tecmo Cups, or the first third of my time at Luna,
Cup Soccer, yeah.
If I had a copy of Tecmo Cup Soccer game, someone who was in there looking for it would be like, ooh, I want that, because they weren't just looking for stuff to jog their memory; they were looking for things to collect.
Or Bases Loaded 4,
right,
or something like that, where it's
right,
like it's a rare game.
Or
but
I
like
always
no one
bring
wants
it up at like fucking Supercars or whatever that Super Sprint game is. Like, that's rare as hell. I've seen it literally once in the store.
No one grew up with it. So, but if you're looking for that game, it's just to
I've seen Panzer Dragoon like 5 times come through. Panzer Dragoon Saga come through the store like 5 times. I've seen that Supercars game come through once. It sold for 20 because who gives a fuck about it anymore?
Yeah,
because it came in after that popularity.
Did working at the store, how did it change your relationship to games? Like, was there like a difference in how you looked at video games before and after you started working there?
If I wasn't kind of already on my way out of collecting by the time I started working at Luna really put the nail in the coffin of me considering myself a collector.
Why do you think that?
I guess because I was around it all the time.
Too much familiarity.
Too much familiarity.
Breeds, what is it, resentment?
Yeah. I was around it all the time. And obviously I still buy games. Technically, if you wanted to give me a label, sure. You could say I'm a video game collector. I still buy Game Boy games. I still buy PC Engine games. I like those collections. I like to work with those collections. But, going into my job at Luna, when I moved out here, when I was in Buffalo, I was a collector like anyone else. Like you, like any of the big video game collectors, I was buying for all systems, buying weird things, buying boxed systems, buying, I was looking for anything that had to do with video games. Sure. When I moved out here, I had less space. I had less time to devote to it. The move of my NES games out here was a pain in the ass. I hated it. I realized what a fucking weight this was that I had attached to myself. What a weight it was that I had attached to myself. And I was poor as fuck when I moved out here too. So it was a combination of like, this is getting to be a pain in the ass to lug around. Prices of these are going up. I started selling off some of my collection. And I have realized that I'm a very specific type of person when it comes to a collection. If I start selling off pieces of a collection, the whole thing falls apart. Once I realize how easy it is to get rid of a couple things, I go, let's just fucking get rid of all of it.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that think that way.
So it was just like slowly over time, I was like, I guess I'm getting rid of all of this, stuff.
Did your interaction with more and more collectors turn you off working in the store? Did you see something in them that you didn't want to see in yourself?
There was a, like I said, I was already kind of on my way out, but it didn't hurt to see people obsessing over very weird things. A person who was one of the first people you knew out here. I clearly remember the day that I thought of, and I'm not saying I came up with it, but it was the day that it came into my head. The term shelf collector. It's a term that's used, but it's a term that popped into my head the day I met this one dude.
Because they said, what was the thing they said?
Because he said, I asked him if I said something about a game being good, and he said, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Yes, you don't play them?" And he goes, "No, I just think they look nice on my shelf."
Yes, I remember that.
And that has stuck with me for a long, long time. And that is, that really, I hate to say it, and I don't want to give this person too much importance, but that really was a pivotal thing in my thinking of video games and how I thought about them, and collecting in general was, you got people, because for me, it seems so strange to me. I'm not trying to be like, I'm a true collector, but it never occurred to me before then, call it being young and naive, that people would buy things that they had no interest in using for their intended purpose.
You weren't on Nintendo age enough like I was.
Right. Well, and I think I kind of avoided that because I got, I caught a whiff of it without realizing what was going on. But sure. I didn't realize that there was a lot of people who bought, collections to kind of have, a status symbol. And I don't care how you collect. You can collect how you want. But it just, that really threw me off. And for, especially early on in the early ages of NES, like NES collecting and Super Nintendo collecting getting popular at Luna, I always kind of divided the people up into two camps in my head. The people who were buying to buy and the people who were buying to play. And I treated them differently. The people who were buying to buy, I would, because I didn't want to hear them fucking say it. "Oh, can I see some copies?" Whenever, someone would come in that I knew was like that, I'd just go and get a bunch of copies and put them on the counter and be like, pick whichever
because
one
they wanted the nicest looking one.
Yeah. And, it just, like, when I say I treated them differently, I don't mean it better or worse, but I learned how to handle different customers in different ways. These people weren't buying it to play it, so if there was a rip on it or if there was a nicer looking copy, I just knew to go and get it automatically and put it in front of them.
I never asked for multiple copies of stuff. Anyway. It was okay. So that's like that. We talked about the stuff that might have turned you off a little bit or changed the way of thinking. What were the ways that interaction with customers made you, I guess, either reignite a love for certain games or consoles, or made you look at video games in a positive way? I'm sure there's those stories as well. Or,
video games in a positive way. I saw a lot of people. I met a lot of people who were very nice. Who obviously, through collecting, it was helping them become social. It was helping them find people with common interests to talk about. I definitely did get back into playing games. Luna really helped me enjoy. It's weird to say, but my time at Luna helped me enjoy playing games again because I was so kind of weirdly turned off by the collector stuff. I got more into taking games home and trying them. I played a lot of 360 games because of Luna. Luna and me getting that 360 for Pac-Man Championship Edition is what sparked at least a 4 or 5 year period of me getting very much into mainstream and modern games again. That's kind of fallen off. But it really got me to realize that retro is not always better. There's a lot of current stuff. Talking to a lot of people who play a lot of different games got me to try a lot of different things that I might not have tried.
Sure.
I remember when Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4 came out. Yes, I worked at Luna during the launch of that. When I worked at Luna, the PlayStation 2 was still a current fucking console. It was in it. I mean, the 360 was coming out that year.
PS2 and GameCube.
But PS2 and GameCube were still current consoles. Anyway, so I played stuff like Call of Duty 4. I tried RPGs that I wouldn't normally try. I played sports games and Maddens. I started playing games online in ways that I normally wouldn't. It was neat. There was kind of a renaissance of me actually playing games to enjoy them and not worrying so much about collecting them.
So now that you've done your time, then you did your bid, like your sentence. What are you gonna miss the most about not working in a game store?
Well, I mean, if I have to be honest, there is parts of it I'm gonna miss. I was thinking about this a little bit last night. So much of my life has been attached to Luna. I'm 39 years old. 15 years of that has been working in the same spot. So it's they always talk about work-life balance. And if I associate a lot of my life with work, I probably did not have a great work-life balance at Luna. But, I met Vani through Luna. I met you through Luna. My marriage is because of Luna. This podcast is because of Luna. Most of the friends that I talk to on a regular basis these days, my friends Adam, my friend Lincoln, these are people that I met through Luna and would not have met at any time in any other way. Luna kept me in California. Luna gave me and this is really more Treg than Luna, but obviously the two are interlinked. Gave me a place to feel like I belonged after my relationship exploded in, 2007, 2008. If it wasn't for working at Luna and for Treg opening up his social circle and, giving me more hours and more responsibilities there, I would not have had an anchor in San Diego, and I would have left. Nothing that I am doing now is likely to have occurred if I did not get that job at Luna. It was a hugely integral part of everything I did. There was a lot of things that I hated about Luna. But now that I'm out of there officially, I don't really, it's crazy. Now that I don't have to worry about it anymore, like a lot of that stress just melted off. I really like thinking about it. I don't even want to think about the bad shit because the good shit was extremely beneficial for me. And I don't have to worry about the bad shit anymore. So why am I going to spend too much time thinking about it?
You don't have to worry about a falcon attacking you from the back room.
Don't have to worry about a falcon attacking me in the back room. I will say this, though. I am, the things that I'm most excited about not having to do anymore. I am so excited to never have to do another fucking video game trade-in again in my life.
You just didn't like to negotiate those, or?
It wasn't. You could always have bad ones. You could always have situations that went poorly. But really the last year I was ready to kind of leave Luna, a few years ago. And then, especially with the pandemic and everything like that, Treg put together that fundraiser for the employees. He found us hours. He got us health insurance and, really made sure that we were taken care of during that time. So it was easy to stick around once COVID began again. But once things opened back up, we're now living in a very different world. And I'm sure people in all customer service fields will say this, that things have just been vastly different since the reopening. People have gotten way touchier. But every trade-in has become this very delicate balance of back and forth. And they always feel like they're just seconds away from going south. And it's tough because I want to give, people want a lot of money and we pay people a lot of money, but a lot of people are selling off this stuff because COVID has completely wiped out their finances and destroyed so many people's bank accounts that it just got something that was that could always go tense now became starts tense. Yes, gotcha. Exactly. It doesn't become tense. Every transaction starts on like a 5 out of 10 instead of a 1 out of 10. Because
now this isn't extra money. This is money people need to live.
This isn't, I found this in my garage. Oh, sick. You're going to give me $100. I've got beer for a couple weeks. This is, I need money to live. I need money to pay rent. And I got tired of it. And I say this truthfully and honestly, Treg's buyback prices throughout all of COVID have been extremely generous, especially the N64 buyback prices. There were multiple times where he was offering like $70 for an N64.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And because we were selling them and we were selling them for $120, but people, so early on, people were very, very appreciative. But as time went on and these things started to get more and more expensive, it wasn't so much Treg was trying to get stock in. Now people were looking at it as thinking, well, this is what I should be paid for it. Sure. And we've got to make profit. There's only
got to pay employees, got to keep the lights on.
We got to make overhead. A profit margin somewhere.
It's capitalism.
So it got sad. it got sad, and I was very stressed out. I started every day extremely stressed out. There were
You never told me this stuff before. It's the first time you told me.
There were many, many days where I woke up and my stomach just hurt, and I didn't want to go in. And Treg and I even talked about that. He's like, dude, he's like, I understand. It's tough, you know.
Because now you're thinking, because now it's feeling more like a freaking pawn shop and people are desperate. That's what you mean.
Yeah, that's exactly what it kind of came down to. And, you know, I'd get so stressed out that I wouldn't really enjoy seeing the regulars anymore, because customers would come in and like, they're nice people. But if I'm like, if a regular comes in, and I don't want any regular who maybe thinks this is them to get upset, but if a regular comes in, there's already that, well, you're always happy to see them, but they're probably going to be talkative. How are you feeling about being talkative at that point in time? You know, it's not like calling up a friend where you both kind of mutually agree, okay, we're going to talk to each other.
You feel obligated to talk.
Right, you feel obligated to talk.
Sure.
That's not a bad thing at work. I mean, it's just part of a job when you're in customer service. You are obligated to talk. So when a regular comes in, you know, you might not always be as happy to see them as you were 2 weeks ago when you saw them, but it's still better than seeing a non-regular.
Sure.
What sucked was post-COVID, in these high-stress times, these regulars coming in, and you want to like have a conversation with them. You want to like chat with them and be nice, but you're fucking burnt out. You're exhausted. You've got nothing to say. It gets tough. It got tough.
It's interesting. You didn't bring this stuff up before. You didn't have to, but I haven't been to the store in years, so I would not have seen the change. You know, the past couple of years.
In terms of not talking, I really need to get this out there too. I don't talk a lot. I don't. I do this podcast and I do another podcast, and I feel like as I get older, I feel like I have less and less to say, and I'm totally happy just not talking about anything that's personal, which is weird. But I don't.
You're my friend.
I know, but even my friends,
Sure.
you know, I've become more quiet as I've gotten older. So, yeah. Anyway, I mean,
but to put a cap on this.
Yeah.
I mean, so you had a 15-year run, which is that's like what Pat math, like 40% of your life, something like that.
Yeah, man, it's nuts.
It's a lot.
15-year run. Like I said, responsible for a lot of the good in my life. Responsible the past few years for a lot of the stress in my life, but that's over now. And I mean, I'm still going to shop there. As a matter of fact, I've got to go in this weekend and pick up something that came in the day after my last day that I had been waiting to come in.
Wow.
So I'm going to be there this weekend.
Maybe once this all clears up, we can do another appearance. We can do a little, that can be fun.
Yeah. And I think, you know, anyone who's been in San Diego who's shopped there, you know, Treg is still there. The guy who's replacing me, Sawyer, is Treg's brother. He's really great, really friendly, very dryly funny and awesome to talk to. You know, support it. You know, just because I'm not there anymore doesn't mean that Luna's not there, but it's going to be weird.
And for those who are going to ask about the good old segment, Tales from the Game Store?
No, probably not, because there's just not a lot of oil left in that well. I was saying to Pat, you know, yesterday, he asked, well, you know, you haven't done one in a couple of years. When I say I checked out the past year, I really did. Maybe if I'm sitting around and I'm thinking, you know, stories will come back to me. But I just, my goal the past couple of years was to get to work, get through the day, and get home. And I did not try to actively remember much of any of it.
You need time to breathe.
Yeah.
You're gonna need a little, like some months to be like, oh, I got to separate out from that.
Right. So
it's a big deal when you quit a job from that long. I didn't have a 15-year job, but when I quit my day job, I took several months to recover. You remember how long it took to recover?
Yeah, it's going to be a few months before I feel on top. It's part of the reason why I'm not doing COVID concerns are one, but it's part of the reason why I'm not really doing any of the conventions this fall. Is like I've got a new job. I'm training to take on a title in January. I want to get used to the new job without
King Ian?
without having to
title.
A new position.
Oh.
I want to settle into my life a little bit because it's just so drastically different now than it was.
All right. Well, you know, it was nice to walk in and see. I should have came in the last day. I probably should have just said hi to you, but
it's fine.
I haven't been since like 2018 at least. I don't think I've been there.
Well, it's weird. I mean, stock-wise right now, you could walk in on a Monday and be incredibly disappointed and then come in on a Tuesday and find everything you need. Like, because all the good stuff gets bought up so quickly that like we either have lots or nothing.
Okay, one last thing. Outside of the NWC card, what was the most memorable trade-in ever?
My favorite trade-in, this is actually one that I can answer. My favorite trade-in was the... old guy who came in. This would have been at the La Mesa location and sold me 2 Vectrexes. One of them boxed complete. The 3D imager, and what was, I think, 1 or 2 games shy, not counting like Mr. Boston, 1 or 2 games shy of a complete Vectrex game set, all complete in the box with their overlays. And the reason I remember it is because he was incredibly friendly, very nice. He had I can't remember what it was. There was like an LCD game in there that he gave me. He was like, "Oh, I'm not going to take this home to sell it. You can just have it." And I was like, "Thanks." But the story behind it was cute. I was like, "Why do you have?" And he had doubles of some of the games too. I was like, "Why do you have 2 Vectrexes?" And he was like, "Oh." Because, like I said, this was an old man.
Yeah.
An elderly individual. He was like in his mid to late 70s. And he's like, "Oh, well, I was into technology when I was, in my youth." He's like, "And I worked in technology, and so did my wife. And I got a Vectrex, and we both loved it. And my wife and I used to argue all the time over who would get to play the Vectrex. So that one's mine, and that one's hers.
Great.
And we had a long coffee table." He's like, "And we had comfortable chairs at either end of the coffee table." And he's like, "We just sat at opposite ends with our Vectrexes." Wow. And he's like, "And with games in the middle." And it was just, I mean, it's simple, but it's like my favorite trade-in story. Very cute.
I wish I got a chance to get some of those. Also, by 84, as an aside, they were starting to clear out the Vectrex stuff, I think. So if you didn't get them up to that point, they're probably a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
After the crash. But, well, thanks for sharing that, Ian. That was very, very poignant and nice. I'm proud of you, buddy.
Thanks.
I'm proud of you.
I appreciate it.
I'm gonna miss our 2-hour conversations that we used to have pre-podcast with you, where you're like, when is this guy gonna fucking leave and get out of the store?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what my my knowledge is of like AAA games at this point, because a lot of my knowledge comes from that. I get a lot of video game news from Twitter, but I mostly follow indie stuff. It was already getting to the point at Luna where like someone would trade in a game, and I'd be like, "Oh, I guess this game got released." Like, and I wouldn't know about that stuff until something at Luna tipped me off about it. So I have a feeling I'm going to get a lot less knowledgeable about
your price expertise on retro stuff's going to plummet.
Yeah, that's
mine
actually
has the past years, but like I try to keep up, but like yours is going to be gone.
Yeah, and I might try to keep up just because it's not a bad skill to have. But I mean, I could also walk away from it for a while and not really care.
Just walk away.